Grants Pass, Oregon is about to be the face of the national debate on homelessness. As Ted Lindner reports for Fox 12, the city is taking its fight against the problem all the way to the Supreme Court.
With rates of homelessness surging, cities across the country are trying to combat the crisis.
The situation's only escalating, and we're seeing more and more people unhoused.
The latest federal data from the Department of Housing and Urban Development reveals an alarming 12% increase in homelessness from 2022 to 2023.
At the same time, we're seeing more and more friction and frustration from community members.
But for years, leaders in several states said their hands have been mostly tied. Back in 2018, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals issued a decision stating it's unconstitutional to issue criminal citations to homeless people for sleeping outside if there are not enough shelter beds available. In 2022, the court ruled civil citations are also not permitted.
If these civil or criminal penalties can be enforced, it will likely go back to a status quo of cycles of incarceration, which also facilitates cycles of homelessness.
Fed up over a lack of progress, the small Oregon town of Grants Pass is taking the fight all the way to the Supreme Court. On April 22nd, Supreme Court justices are set to hear the town's case about being able to implement penalties to reduce the number of homeless camps. If the Supreme Court decides to overturn the decisions from the appeals court, it could change how Oregon and the rest of the nation can address homelessness.
Maybe then we can start policing the parks again, but we still have like 200 people who have to go somewhere. And so I just don't really see how that resolves the issue.
Ted Lindner, Fox 12, Oregon.